Hello everybody. I'm going to speak softly in this video because I don't want to wake up somebody on the other room. Okay? So I hope you guys can understand what I'm saying. Okay, what we have here is a Nikon F that I'm currently overhauling, and I'm going to show you where I grease the parts and how. Okay, so first we'll look at the chassis of the Nikon F. This is how far I will assemble the Nikon F. I won't assemble any further because it would be a waste of effort and it's going to be a complete overhaul. Well, this is basically a complete overhaul anyway. So see how it's clean here? It used to be really filthy. And I'm going to show you where the other parts are. The other parts are here. Fermenting in benzene, and that should help dissolve any old grease or oil that might fall out of any of the assembly. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about the oil. I'm using very fine quality Lana oil. I got this from my supplier, Mr. Sasabe, and the best way to use this is to dilute it in benzene. So that's 8 parts Lana oil, 2 parts benzene, and you can even go thinner or you can even go a little bit thicker, but the general rule is you never use Lana oil straight. Okay, now to apply the Lana oil, I use a disposable syringe so that, you know, when this goes bad I can just throw it away. It doesn't really matter if you use an expensive syringe or a cheap one, so long as it's working. And you will want to have a fine tipped needle. Now this thing got bent, and I didn't do this on purpose, by the way, but it actually came in very handy because I can actually inject oil from an angle. Okay, so I'm going to show you the parts where I applied some oil. You will want to apply some oil here, and underneath this sponge there's another one over there. So once you apply some oil here, the oil is going to migrate all the way here into the shaft. You don't want to put too much, so I applied a small drop over here, and capillary action just took the oil down there into the whole thing. And you would want to apply some oil here on the bushing of the cylinder, and here as well. There's another bushing here, and this part, because this part should move like this freely. On the other side, you would want to add some here as well, on the base of the shaft. So this is basically the second lever arm. Wait, the second lever arm is this one. But anyway, this is part of the rear curtain triggering mechanism. So there, you would want to lubricate what's underneath that thing. By the way, this thing is actually very, very sensitive. You don't want to bend this thing And see this thing? You don't want to bend this out of position, or else your timing will be off. Now, you can actually bend this thing back and forth to adjust it, but in general you don't have to. You just leave it as is. Okay, so let's go back to the lubrication points. So you lubricate this part as well. You put some oil here in the pivot and here as well. Okay, deep within this column, I want to apply some oil over there and let the oil propagate up. Okay, so this thing should also move like this. Okay, so you may want to grease this instead actually, but I don't know, I just oil it. I just oil it. Okay, so let's go to the top part. This is the most sensitive part of the Nikon F because, as you can see, well, the speed selector is now gone, but as you can see, almost everything related to the exposures all over here. Okay, so I would lubricate this part very well. I actually took this part out and cleaned this very well so that the advance will be very smooth. If you have any excess oil puddling up, you just want to wipe them away like that. So one thing you'll have to remember about this screw is that, just like most screws related to the advancing mechanism, this screw is a left-handed screw. So if you turn it to the counterclockwise, it will tighten it. If you turn it clockwise, it will loosen it. So that's a very important thing that you should remember if you want to remove this, okay? Because you don't want to turn it counterclockwise towards the left, because that's going to strip the head. See, cleaning it makes it really smooth. So when you advance it, it's going to be super smooth. Okay, so this thing as well, this is the ratchet. You would want to lubricate this as good as possible. So one thing that you should remember, I don't know if you can see it, let me zoom in. There's actually a notch over here. So this notch is for, let me wipe some oil. Okay, so this notch is actually for a wire that's connected to the gear over here, so that when the gear turns the other way, this thing is going to catch this thing and it's going to lock the gear. Okay, so that's how the ratchet works. So yeah, you want to lubricate this part as well. So, and this thing, you want to apply some oil here, so because it's part of the sprocket mechanism. So yeah, you want to apply some oil here too, and some oil here, so that your sprocket moves really smooth. And this thing, to apply some oil here. Oops, see how lazy it is? That's not good. I'll have to open this later and clean this really well. This is not good. Bad lever. Okay, so what else? This thing is very important. See, that's very good. And what else? Ah, in Japanese, this thing is called the funegatareba, which means the boat-shaped lever. So this is the rear curtain arm. Okay, so you want to lubricate this part and make sure that when you press it, it moves freely, and you want to apply oil here and let the oil seep in and inside the ear as well. Okay, so that's probably it for this part of the camera. So there's one thing that I have to emphasize is that you want to clean this very well. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny claw here. You would want to clean this very well and lubricate the base of this thing. It's very important. So as you can see, this lazy lever over here, this thing charges the mirror like this. Okay, so you want to grease this part so that when it rubs against the lever from the mirror housing, it's going to be very smooth. That's how you make your cocking very smooth, because the resistance you feel from cocking the advanced lever is usually coming from this part. Okay, so what else did I miss? So okay, everything that is activated by your hands means, hold on, let me tighten this screw first. Doesn't seem right. Because it feels a little bit too loose. Okay, whatever. Where are we? Okay, any cog that's cranked manually, like this thing on the advanced lever mechanism, you would want to grease the teeth. Okay, so you'll grease the teeth here using a paintbrush. You apply some grease over here and this part as well. And there's another gear that's supposed to be here, but it's not. It's called the mirror charge lever, a mirror charge gear. So you want to charge that, you want to grease that gear as well. And what else? Yeah, that's it. That's the only things that you usually grease in here, really. This is just a personal rule or guideline. So anything that moves automatically, just like these things, anything that's spring loaded, or anything that should move freely, should be oiled, and anything that moves with manual activation has to be greased. Okay, so I rarely do this, but you can actually remove this part and clean what's underneath that thing, because it can get really dirty here as well. Okay, so what else? So I also oil this thing. I sometimes grease this, and I also oil this thing. Apply a small drop of oil here, and this thing as well. Okay, so that it moves freely. Very nice. Okay, so that's my pointers for how to grease the Nikon F. So there are other things that aren't here, but I'll cover them in the tutorial. Okay, so one more thing, if you want to make sure that your mechanism works properly, or rather test it, you want to cock it first. Okay, you cock it by, now that nothing's here, you want to cock it by rotating the sprocket. Okay, let me zoom out. Okay, okay, she's awake. You want to turn it by turning this, you want to cock it by turning the sprocket, but it won't let you at this moment because this thing is actually in the way. Okay, so you want to press this thing down and then cock it like so. Okay, you want to press it again, see, until you hear the pawl catch. Okay, so check this out. So of course you want to press on this thing. So the mirror isn't here, that's why nothing's pressing on this thing. So once you press that, the pawl disengages. Okay, so click on this, you press on this thing and press and hold. Oops, why isn't anything happening? See, press and hold. That should give you bulb mode. If it doesn't, then there's something probably wrong over here. Okay, here's another sample of the bulb mode. See, should get something like that. Okay, one last thing before we finish the video. So I'm actually successful at making the F operate with the minimum of tension. That's really what you want in any camera. You want it to operate with the least tension you could. So you can do that after lubricating everything, so everything's well oiled and moving freely. Only then can you adjust the springs here and make it operate with really lower, with much lower tension. I would even say like maybe less than 1/3. That would make your, excuse me, let me just burp. Oops, my manners. Okay, so if, where were we? Okay, tension. So if your springs aren't over tension, when you cock your shutter, everything is much smoother and your shutter lasts longer because they're not stressed, and yeah, they're less noisier as well. They don't clack, they just whip, just like that. Okay, so yeah, that's the thing for the Nikon F, and I'm not going to discuss how to adjust the shutter speeds because I'm going to tackle that on the main article. So yeah, see you guys next time. Bye bye.